Hi there! Welcome back, future coder woman. Guess what? You've finished a third of our course already. Great job! You're really pushing to learn to code and it's fantastic. Keep it up, stay strong, and by the end of this challenge, your head will be full of coding knowledge that will stay with you. Remember, what you learn is yours forever. I hope you're not too tired after learning all that. You should know the real fun is just starting. You've made it through the important basics, the stuff we couldn't skip. Now it's time to use that knowledge for our big project. We will take what we've learned and build parts of a web page. Along the way, there will be new HTML tags we haven't talked about, extra CSS rules you haven't learned yet, and popular web tricks and tips I will throw in as we go. We have many exciting things coming up, so it's time to dive into our project. We've outlined the project in HTML already. Now it's time to add some style with CSS. We will start by resetting the default styles, so our project looks the same on different internet browsers. This will be a quick part, like a warm-up. So, let's get started. Have you ever wondered why websites sometimes might look different when viewed in Chrome compared to Firefox or Safari compared to Microsoft Edge? Each browser has its default styles for elements like margins, padding, and font sizes, causing your website's appearance to differ from one browser to another. Imagine you're a painter and you have a canvas that already has some paint on it. You have to create your masterpiece on top of what's already there, and the final result may not look exactly as you had planned. That's what it's like to design a website without resetting CSS. The default browser styles act as the existing paint on the canvas. Reset CSS is like starting with a clean blank canvas. It removes the browser's default styles, giving you a consistent baseline to work with so your design looks the same across different browsers. Alright, so how exactly do we reset CSS? It's pretty simple. Let's go to the code pen to see how it works. Let's create a new pen. But wait, even though our page is empty, it already has some styling. How do we know? Let's put on our detective hats and open up the Chrome DevTools. Right-click anywhere on the preview window and select Inspect to open DevTools. Do you see that? The page already has a margin of 8 pixels. We didn't add that, did we? No. It came as a default from the browser. Each browser has a set of default styles it applies. And in Chrome's case, it likes to add a bit of breathing space around the body of your web page. But what if we don't want that margin? What if we want to set our own rules? Well, that's where Reset CSS come in. In the CSS section, we are going to reset default styles. We will use a special CSS symbol, an asterisk, that targets all elements, every paragraph, heading, link, button, body, everything. Let's add a margin with a value of 0 and the same for padding. Now let's see what happened. Go back to the Chrome DevTools. You should now see the margin is set to 0 and our rule overrides the previous one. We've successfully reset the styles. Ready for some more action? We're moving from CodePen and bringing our CSS Reset to our own project. Open up VS Code and go to our project. Find the style.css file. This is where we will add our reset styles, almost the same ones we used in CodePen. So go ahead and type, or even better copy our reset CSS code from CodePen and paste it into the style.css file. Let's also add a box sizing property set to the border box value. Do you remember our lesson about the box model? We can more predictably manage every item's size thanks to the border box value. Remember to save our changes. With this code, you've just told every element in our project to start with 0 margins, 0 padding, and the box sizing property set to border box. Excellent job! I have one more quick thing to know. Our Reset CSS code is straightforward and doesn't cover all differences. You might be surprised that elements like buttons, lists, form fields, headings, links, and tables can look quite different across browsers like Chrome, Firefox, Safari, or Edge. But don't worry, we're focusing on the basics only in this challenge, and for now, we won't reset anything more. For those curious minds who want to dive deeper into browser default styles, there's a super helpful resource for you in the Materials section. Check out this website. It's a comprehensive list of all the styles that browsers apply by default. If you love to explore more, I have another link in the Materials section. This is an article by Josh Comeau about CSS Reset. This article is excellent, but more difficult than what we are learning in this course. It's totally optional, so don't worry if you find it challenging. We are focusing on the basics here, and there's no rush to understand everything all at once. Keep your curiosity alive and keep exploring, but remember, it's also important to focus on the fundamentals and build a strong base. Now that we've reset the styles, we can begin the fun part, adding our own styles. Colors, fonts, sizes, and much more. So keep ready, because next time we will start styling our project. Get set, because our coding journey is about to be much more fun. Alright, code superhero. We're just about to get into some serious coding. But hold on. We've got one last step before we dive in. Trust me, it's worth it. Today's topic? It's the BEM methodology. I know. Methodology sounds all scientific, but stick with me here. It's not rocket science, believe me. Why am I bringing this up now, you may ask? See, when you start writing bigger and bigger projects, your CSS code can look like a tornado just ripped through it. A total mess and chaos. You may begin to lose track of selectors, classes, and IDs. Suddenly, you find yourself drawing in a sea of class names, struggling to remember what each class or ID does, or facing situations where different class names affect the same elements unintentionally. Like you're styling one part of the web page and oops, you've just changed the styles of a totally different part. The good news is, we are not the first to have this problem. All web developers know this mess. That's why there are so many methodologies to help developers keep their code organized and easy to change or expand when needed. And that's where BEM comes in. It's one of the most popular. It's a set of rules we should follow when naming components in HTML and CSS. You might think, what could be so hard about naming classes and IDs? I just need to find a name that fits and I'm good to go. Well, it's not always that straightforward. When you're starting, everything seems simple. You name your blocks as you see them. But when your project grows, you might forget which block is for what. It becomes a big mess. This is where BEM steps in like a helpful guide. It's a way to label your blocks clearly and make connections between them. So, no more scratching your head thinking, what's this block for again? Of course, BEM really shines when you're working on larger projects. But hey, who says we can't practice on our portfolio project? This way, you won't be confused when you see classes with double underscores or double hyphens in some project or CodePen code. You will read the code and understand what each element is for. Also, don't be surprised if someone asks about BEM in a job interview. So, what is this BEM and how to use it? Let's find out together. BEM, or Block Element Modifier, is a smart way to name and organize your HTML and CSS code to keep it more understandable and flexible. Now, let's break BEM down. Block is like an independent component that makes sense on its own. For example, a header, footer, or button in your code. The block name should always be unique. Element is a part of the block that can't stand alone, like title, text, or item inside a header. Modifier is a flag on a block or element. It's used to signal a change in appearance or behavior. For example, disabled, highlighted, or active in case of a button block. See the double underscores and double hyphens? They aren't scary anymore. With BEM, we can tell by looking at the HTML structure how elements relate to each other without having to dig through hundreds of lines of CSS. This is the magic of BEM. It gives your code more clarity, making it easier to understand and maintain. So you might be scratching your head thinking, why should I bother with BEM? Well, let me give you some clear reasons to sum up what we've just learned. As we spoke earlier, with BEM, it's easy to see what's going on in your code just by looking at the class names. Button red, that's a red version of our button. Header logo, that's the logo sitting in our header. BEM helps us avoid messing up other things accidentally because every styling piece is linked to a specific block or element. Need to make changes? BEM makes it clear where to add your styles, just like your own coding GPS. With BEM, your blocks are like Lego pieces. You can use them over and over in different parts of your site. In the world of coding, there's a very popular rule known as the DRY principle. It stands for don't repeat yourself, and guess what? BEM is an excellent way to follow this rule. BEM blocks are reusable, meaning we can use the same block of code multiple times without writing new CSS code every single time. It's time for some examples of BEM in action. Let's say we are building a website for a bookstore and we want a card component to display each book. The card has a title, an author, an image, and a Buy Now button. This looks pretty good, doesn't it? But remember, classes like image, title, author, and button are pretty common. If they are used elsewhere in your CSS, you could get unexpected style overlaps. So let's BEMify it. Bingo! Now each class name is connected to the card block. We can reuse this card block anywhere on the site, and it will look and function consistently. Plus, there's no worry about the styles for card image, card title, card author, or card button clashing with classes of the same name outside of our card block. What's interesting, as you can see, we only use classes here. You might wonder, can't we just use IDs for styling? They are unique, so they could help avoid that mess, right? Well, not quite. IDs must be unique and, as you can remember, can only be used once per page. With IDs, you can't create reusable components, one of the main advantages of using BEM. So, using BEM, you can forget about IDs. We will use only classes here. Alright, let's see one more example. Imagine we have a common button style throughout our site, but in some places, we want to highlight a special action with a different color button, for example in a card block. We could add a new block called Special and write a bunch of new styles for it. But that would mean we are not reusing our original button block. That's not very dry, is it? With this code, the special class might conflict with other special classes in our code. It's not connected to our button within the card, which could accidentally affect other elements. Now we have a button specifically for our card block and a special version of our card button. The styles for card button special will only affect our cards button and won't mess with other elements. Plus, we are still using our original button styles for the card. This is the dry principle at work. It makes our code easier to manage and understand. So that's BEM in a nutshell. Combining BEM with coding principles like dry can make us more effective and productive developers. Plus, with BEM, working together on larger projects is easier. We have just reached the end of this video, and that's something worth celebrating. So please take a short break, fasten your seatbelts, and let's dive into coding the portfolio project. Hello and welcome to our first really hands-on video. We're about to dive into building the header of our website. Congrats on making it through the theory part. We had to cover those basics to lay out our HTML and CSS coding fundamentals. These are your compass and map that will guide you in this coding adventure, and you won't find yourself lost wondering, oh my god, what's going on here? If you found any of the topics from our previous episodes to be tough, don't worry. Things will begin to make sense as we start to code, like puzzle pieces coming together. Remember, Rome wasn't built in a day, and mastering coding is a similar adventure. With each line of code you write, you'll get better, and eventually, creating a website will be as easy as a walk in the park. Coding is like a workout. So, flex those coding muscles as much as you can. Write along with me in this course, but also try to write your own, even small projects, for example on CodePen. The more you code, the faster you'll learn. Now let's talk about the main task for today, the header. Please find the prototype file we worked on before in your course materials. This is our blueprint. It will help us to visualize the end product. Let's take a closer look at the header. It's an essential part of the website, and in our case, it includes the logo on the left. It's like a compass guiding us home. We will make it a link that returns us to the home page. This is a common and helpful tool in web design. Next up is our global navigation. You can think of this as the website's tour guide. With just a quick look, our users can see the main attractions of our site. We will add some nice visual effects to make it a bit more exciting. We will also make each item act like a magic door that, when clicked, transports users to different parts of the website. It's a great tool, especially for single-page websites. Finally, we will code a button within the navigation. It will allow users to download our client's resume. This unique standing out link is called a call to action, and this is a popular feature in web development. We will focus on these key tasks as we build the website's header. Of course, we will also add some cool styles to make it look great. We are starting with the header because it's a very important part of every website. Are you ready to start coding? Let's do this! Let's go to our code editor. We will spend lots of time here. The first thing we will do is give our header element a class. Remember when we discussed BEM naming? Let's keep it simple and call the header class header. It's unique, we only have one header on a page, and it's clear which element we mean. As we learned about BEM, this is our block. The items inside will be elements, and their names will feature the block name. Inside our header, we already have a link with an image. Let's give it a class according to BEM. What name do you think fits? I suggest header logo, so we immediately know what it is. Nice. Before we look at navigation, we can give our logo and header some style. Let's start with the header. In the style.css file, type the selector header. Don't forget the dot at the beginning. It means we're using a class. Of course, you can use a tag and write it without a dot, but if we have a class assigned to an element, it's good to use that. Next, we will write some styles. Let's start with the height. I want our header not to be too tall, but it would be nice if the items inside had a bit of space at the top and bottom. Let's set our header's height at 90 pixels. Most headers range between 50 and 100 pixels, so our 90 pixels will be high enough for the items inside to have some space, but low enough to not interrupt the browsing experience, especially on mobile devices. Awesome, good job! If you look now using DevTools, our header is not as tall as our logo. But that's okay. We will take care of that later. Check this out. Our header fills up the whole width of the page, even if we didn't set a width. How did that happen? Remember when we talked about display property? Our header has a default value set to block, uses all the space, and the next element starts from a new line. So we don't need to set a width for the header. It's already perfect. To make it easier to see what we are doing with the header, let's make the body of the page very tall, say 2000 pixels. This will allow us to scroll down and see what's happening with the header. We don't have much content yet, so this extra height helps. We will remove it later. Now try scrolling down the page. Our header stays at the top and then disappears. It would be good to make the header always visible, so how can we do that? Take a break, pause the video, and think about how to keep the header at the top so it stays visible even when scrolling. Did you figure it out? Let's talk about it. We need to use a property called position. To keep the header visible, we could use fixed. Remember when we stuck a box with a special dish to the bottom of the page in the restaurant menu exercise? That's what we did. Let's see what happens when we add position fixed to our header. It stays with us when we scroll, which is great. But wait, there's a problem. The rest of the page content jumped to the top. Now our header is covering it. Why do you think that happened? You might already know this. Position fixed means the item is set relative to the browser window and steps out of the normal flow of the page. That's why the rest of the page jumped to the top. Of course, we can fix this by setting the right padding top for the main element, which holds the rest of the content to make space for the header. But who likes to make life complicated? Setting the header with position fixed is common, and if you figure it out with this method, well done. However, I prefer using position sticky. If you thought of this method, good job. As I said before, there's never only one correct coding method. There are many ways to solve problems, and this is a good example. Let's change the header's position from fixed to sticky and see the effect. The header stays at the top of the page, so it's not working as we wanted, right? Yes, because we need another property. Let me explain. Hopefully, you remember position sticky is unusual. It combines features of two other values, position relative and fixed, remember? An element with this value behaves like a relative element until it reaches a certain point where it becomes sticky. It all makes sense. Our header is acting like a relative so far. We didn't set any point for it to change its behavior. So let's add top 0. This will make it stick to the top of the browser window right from the start. The great thing about position sticky is that it positions our header to the parent element, in this case the body, not the browser window. It stays in the normal flow of the page. That's why, as you can see, the rest of the page stayed unchanged. Excellent, that's what we wanted. Let's also add background color so the header isn't too transparent. Let's make it the same color as the page background. Nice work! I hope you're having fun working on the header so far. Before we finish styling the header in this video, let's go to the logo image. It's too big and is sticking out of the header for now. We can resize the image in at least 2 ways, one with the knowledge you have so far, and the second by discussing an additional CSS technique. Which one you choose is totally up to you. I'll explain both to teach you as much as possible. Let's get started. First of all, in any case, it's good to decide how big our logo should be. Let's first look at the inspector to see what size the logo currently is. Okay, we have a width of 500 pixels and a height of 125 pixels. That's definitely too much. We can reduce the dimensions, but how to do it while keeping the proportions? We can do a trick like this. Divide the height and width with the same number. Let's say divide by 5. We will reduce the logo size 5 times. 500 divided by 5 will be 100. That's our new width. 125 divided by 5 is 25. We'll use that as the height. Alright, we have the logo dimensions ready. It's time to implement them. As I mentioned, there are several ways to do this. First, let's see what happens when we add dimensions to the header logo class, because that's where our logo is, right? Nothing changed. The logo is still too big. Do you know why? As you can see in DevTools, we didn't touch the image at all. The header logo class is assigned to the anchor tag and the image is inside this. So what can we do? How can we reach it? The EMG element is a child of the anchor tag. In CSS, there are many ways to select elements. Now you will learn one that will help us reach our goal. Imagine a div element with a class. Let's call it card. Inside it, we have 2 paragraphs, one with a class text and the other with no class. How can we select all the paragraphs inside a div with the class card? Here's how to write it. Yes, I know, you've seen something similar when we talked about selecting more than one selector. But in that case, we used a comma to separate them. In this case, when we put a space between the card class and the p tag, it means we want to style all the paragraphs, but only the ones inside the card class. This goes for all paragraphs, no matter if they have a class or an ID or not. What's more, the other paragraphs on the page outside the card class won't be affected. This is great and often used in web developers' work. So how could this work in our project? Well, first we add the anchor tag class, which is header logo, then we add EMG right after it, separated by a space. This way we can apply style directly to the image. Let's check if it works. Great! Our logo is now smaller, just as we wanted it to be. But there's one thing about this method. Remember, in the case of the card class and paragraphs, this way we select all elements of a given type inside a given element. This means that if, theoretically, we had more EMG elements inside the anchor tag, they would automatically receive these styles. Of course, this is only theoretical because we're not planning to add anything else there. We can leave the code as it is, it works fine. But we can improve it further using a method you already know. Using the BEM methodology, we can simply add a class to the EMG tag. This way we can select the image directly through the class. It even seems like a better solution in my opinion. Okay, but how to do it? It's a child element of header logo, so it's actually a grandchild of the header class. How to write this down? Should we create long chains of classes in such cases, like in this example? And what if we have a great-grandchild or even a great-great-grandchild? Our code would start to look messy. What can we do? We don't have to chain them. It's enough to treat them the same as child elements, as header logo, for example. Just add the block name at the beginning, 2 underscores, and the element name. This way we will create a connection with the block and won't get lost in weird long names. So let's name the image class header image. Let's add it to the HTML code. Great! Now in styles.css, we can replace header logo EMG with header image. Great, everything works perfectly. At this moment, the logo is stuck in the top left corner of the header without any space around it. So let's add some padding to the header to give the image a bit of room to breathe. For example, let's add 10 pixels padding at the top and bottom and 40 pixels on the left and right. Do you remember how we can write this? Of course, we could write it one by one as separate properties, padding top, padding bottom, padding left and right. However, that would be quite a lot of code. Let's use the shorthand notation instead. In this case, the first value is for the top and bottom, and the second for the left and right. Awesome! We added some space between the header content and the browser window. What else can we improve? It would be great if we could put the logo right in the middle of the header, don't you think? How can we do that? Yes, we can use Flexbox for that. First, let's make our header a flex container by adding the display flex rule. You might not see any difference right away, but this step prepares the header for the changes we're about to make. We will also need Flexbox later when we start adding navigation. Now, how do we vertically center the logo? Remember how? Just to refresh your memory. If we don't specify a flex direction value, the default is row. This means the elements will line up from left to right. This also means that our main axis goes from left to right and our cross axis goes from top to bottom. Do you remember the property we used to align items along the cross axis? I know it's tricky and it was for sure hard to remember, so I will remind you. It's align items. By setting align items to center, we can center the logo vertically in the header. Let's try that and see what happens. Excellent, it's working and our header is starting to look even better. Well done! Before we take a break and move on to the other parts of the header, I want to tell you about another cool feature in CSS, comments. Our CSS file is already quite readable thanks to BEM and meaningful class names. But we can improve readability even more by writing some comments. Comments are especially helpful when our code base grows. It's also good practice to use comments when you want to explain to other developers what your code does. We will write a lot of code during this challenge, so it's a good idea to start adding some comments now. How do you write comments in CSS? Here's an example. All you need to do is to use these symbols to start and end your comment, and that's it. Anything between these symbols will be treated as a comment by browsers and will be ignored. Also, you can add comments anywhere in your CSS file, either on a new line or in the same line as your code. Comments not only make working with others easier, but they are also a great source of information for the author. For example, you can put a reminder in a comment for yourself. Then, when you revisit the project later, you will not forget what you intended to do. During coding, you can use comments to disable specific lines temporarily, letting you see how the code works without those lines. It's extremely handy. Let's go to VS Code and add some comments. First, go to the line with the body height. Remember how I said we are only adding it to check how the header will behave? It's still there and we will still need it. But as time goes by, we might forget about it and leave it there. We don't want that. So let's write a reminder next to it. After the semicolon, add a space, then write comment symbols. Write the text inside. We need to remove this later. Great job! Now we won't forget to remove it when we need to. Comments are also great for explaining code. So what do you think about adding a comment to the section where we reset all element styles? This time we will add a comment on a new line right after the asterisk and curly bracket. Put your cursor there, add the symbols at the beginning and end of the comment, and inside write this message: resetting the default styles. This way, anyone who reads our code, including us, will understand the purpose of this section and what it's supposed to do. Great job! You're learning so many new things today. It's also a good idea to separate the sections in your CSS file that relate to different parts of your website. So far, we have global styles and header-related styles. Let's add appropriate comments. At the very top, in line number 1, add a comment that says global styles. Here we'll add styles for the whole website. Before the header class, add another comment that says header styles. We will put all the styles for the header here. This makes it easier to find the right part if we want to change or add something. Well done! You finished your first big coding lesson. How do you feel? I hope you had fun as I did. We used techniques we talked about in the past few days. Now, by working on a real site, you can practice what you learned. I'm really proud of you. You're doing great, so keep going. Take a break and then join me in the next video about the header. We will work on navigation this time. See you there! Welcome back to another episode about the header. In the last video, you learned a lot of new stuff, and we improved the header and logo together. In this episode, we will do the navigation together, a really important part of every website, as I mentioned before. While talking about navigation, I want to teach you about lists, both ordered and unordered in HTML. That will be another new thing for you to learn. Also, you'll learn what a gap in Flexbox is and how to use it. We have much to do, but I bet you're as excited as I am. So let's get started. Remember our prototype for the header? It has a logo, which we've already finished and looks pretty good, navigation, and a call to action button. We will work on the button a bit later, but for now, let's start with the navigation. But there's a thing. To make the navigation, you need to understand lists in HTML. Yes, more learning, but don't worry, we'll use it right away. Lists are really important in HTML, not just for navigation, so it's good to know them. What exactly are these lists? You've seen them before. Have you ever cooked from a recipe on the internet? Look at the list of ingredients you need to make the dish. That's an HTML list. See the dots before each ingredient? That's an unordered list, meaning the order of items doesn't matter. We will start with this type of list in HTML. How do we write it? Should we use an HTML entity to create a dot? Definitely not. Look at the code. We can create the entire list, including dots, using two new HTML tags, UL and LI. UL stands for an unordered list and LI is a list item. It's simple, isn't it? Make sure all list items are inside a UL tag. That's how each list item gets a dot before its name. And with CSS, you can change the dot to a different shape, like a square, and even change its color. We won't do that now, but it's good to know you can. There's more info about it in a link below this video in the materials section. If you have free time and want to play around, try changing the black dot to something else, for example making the demo in CodePen. Now let's go to the next part. We've covered unordered lists, so it's time for ordered lists. These are lists where the order of items is important. When would we use this? For example, when we want to list contest winners on a website, who was first, second, and so on. We can also use them to show a step-by-step guide on making a recipe. A recipe page is an excellent example of using HTML list. You can see here both types in action. The unordered list is used for ingredients, and the ordered list is used for cooking steps. So, how do we create an ordered list in HTML? It's almost the same as creating an unordered list. The only difference is in the tag we use. For an ordered list, we use OL instead of UL, and for the items inside, we use LI tags in both cases. After learning a bit, it's time for action. Let's go to VS Code and build navigation using what we learned about HTML lists. We will write some HTML first and then style it. Are you ready? Let's go! The first thing we will create inside the header is nav. It's a special tag that marks the part of the page for navigation. Do you remember I said that HTML5 gave us many semantic tags? That includes header and nav. Thanks to them, we can now create documents with better structure. Let's add nav to our code by making an opening and a closing tag. Good job! Also, let's give it a class if we need to style it later. Our main element, the block, is the header, so that will be the first part of our class name for nav. We can use the tag name for the second part, so our class will be header nav with a double underscore between them. Awesome, everything's going well. Now we can start creating our list of links. Quick question for you. Will we use an unordered or ordered list in this case? Think about it. In this case, it's best to use an unordered list. Why? Because the order of the links doesn't matter much. Also, this way of writing is common in web development. There's no point in adding order where it isn't needed. On a new line between nav tags, add an opening and a closing UL tag. Awesome! We are doing really well. What do you think about adding a class to the list? According to our previous lesson, we treat grandchild elements as child. So our class can be header nav list. Notice we use one hyphen, not two, because it's a continuation of the name, not a modifier. It's important to remember this. An HTML list isn't complete until we add some list items. Let's add them now. To do this, let's go back to our prototype for a bit. We've got a list of links right there. There are 4: Home, About, Projects, and Contact. We've got Download CV too, but we will take care of that separately. So we have 4 links to add. Let's start making the list. Inside the UL tag, make the first LI. Please open it and close it. Nice. What can we put inside? Anything. A picture, a link, a paragraph, whatever you want. For our menu, do you know what we will need? That's right, an anchor tag. We want the list items to be links to different page sections. So, in the first list item, make an anchor tag. For now, we will use a hash for the href attribute of each link. But we will handle this later. We will return to this once we've built all the sections of our web page. In the anchor tag, put the text Home. Excellent! Our first navigation item is ready. Now, duplicate this list item 3 times. Make sure to label them About, Projects, and Contact. Awesome! Let's see how it works. Oops, we've got the navigation in the header, and that's great, but it doesn't look too attractive yet, right? We need to style it a bit to make it look like our prototype. Here's what we will do. We need to update the styles, change color, remove the default underline, and perhaps add color transition on hover. That would be a nice effect. Plus, we need to remove the dots next to each navigation item. We don't need them. But feel free to leave them if you want. It all depends on your taste. Moreover, we need to correctly position the navigation to the right of the screen and vertically centered, just like our logo. So we have a game plan. Let's get started. Let's start by positioning the navigation. Our menu should be on the right side of the header and the logo on the left. It would be nice if the logo and our navigation were close to the sides of the browser without extra space between them and the browser's edges. How can we do this? Flexbox is the answer. More precisely, the Justify Content property, which controls how our elements are distributed along the main axis. Let's check out our cheat sheet for its values. Which one to choose? Flex Start, Center and Flex End certainly won't meet our needs. We don't want to set elements from the right or from the left or center them. So which of the remaining options should we consider? Space between or space around? As we don't want spaces on the right and left sides of the browser window, we'll use a space between. Let's add it. In the style.css file, where do you think we should write it? We should add it to the header because we want to organize its elements. Let's add justify content space between and check the result. Good job! The navigation has moved to the right side, and it's as far from the window edge as the logo, thanks to the padding we added earlier. Our header is looking better with each step. Next, let's fix the list of items. We don't want them to line up from top to bottom. We want them to go from left to right. What's the solution? Flexbox again. I know it seems like Flexbox is the answer to everything. But believe me, it's a really powerful tool in CSS. But how can we line up the list items from left to right using Flexbox? You don't need to write a lot of code to do this. All you need to do is to create a flex container from navigation. Why is it enough? As you remember from the previous video or the lesson about Flexbox, every flex container has a flex direction property set to row. What does it mean? It means that in this case, our main axis goes from left to right as our elements. That's why we don't need to write anything more, only makes a flex container from the navigation. Perfect. So we need to add the display with flex value to the navigation, right? The display flex we applied to the header element won't work here. Flexbox affects only the direct children of a given element. So let's add it, but where exactly? Should it be header nav or header nav list? Think about it for a moment and decide. Pause the video and try to add display flex to your selected element. Did it work? If you chose header nav, I'm sorry to disappoint you. You probably didn't notice any changes in the navigation, right? Let's add display flex to this element and check in the browser. Exactly, nothing changed. So we should add it to the header nav list element. Add it and check if it works. There you go. The items are lined up from left to right. They aren't perfect and they overlap. But that's not a big deal now. The layout is just as we wanted. But hey, why did adding flex to header nav list work and not to header nav? When you add display flex to an element, only its children become flex items. The header nav element has only one child, which is the header nav list. If you want to apply Flexbox to list items, li, we need to add display flex to their direct parent, which is the header nav list. This might seem complicated and strange now, but with practice you'll find that working with Flexbox can be a lot of fun and it can help you solve many problems in your work. It's really worth remembering and practicing. Let's continue. I've mentioned before that our navigation elements are starting to overlap because the dots before the text aren't considered to take up any space. If you look closely at the inspector, each list item only occupies as much width as its text. So what can we do? We can create some room between them, but how? For example, we could add a bit of a right margin to each element, say 20 pixels. Let's try that and see what we achieve. We will start with select list items in the CSS file. Do you remember our discussion about selecting all child elements of a specific type as we did with the logo? We will start with our list, the header nav list. Then add a space and type li. This means we're going to apply styles to all list items in this list. That's the idea. Let's add the margin and see how the navigation looks now. Well, it seems pretty good. But there's a catch. If you notice in the inspector, while each element indeed has more space, look at what has happened to the last item. It also has a right margin, making it no longer at the same distance from the right edge of the page as the logo is from the left. That's not right. Of course, there are many techniques to deal with this. Some are more complicated than others. For example, we could target only the last element, yes, it's possible, but beyond the scope of this course, and set its right margin to 0. But I have a more practical solution. Flexbox comes to our rescue again. Either way, our list is already a flex container, so it won't be too much extra work. But how to use Flexbox in this case? Let me introduce you to another property. I haven't mentioned it yet, but now's the perfect time. It's called gap. Of course, we can only use it in a flex container, not outside of it. But it's a real game changer. Gap will help us position elements at a distance from each other. We just need to decide how big the distance should be. Let's try setting it to 40 pixels and see how it looks in the browser. Wow, the elements are 40 pixels apart and the space is only added between them. There's no extra space after the last item, it's just perfect. This is the simplest way to use the gap property. But you can also use it in a more complex way. If you're interested, I recommend reading the additional information below this video. Good job! Our navigation is looking better and better. You've completed another round of practice. How do you feel? I hope you're getting more comfortable with coding. We've accomplished a lot. I invite you to join the third and final episode of our header work series. We'll complete the styles and work on the call to action. Let's go! Welcome back to the final video on making a header. We're almost finished with the first section of our project. You're doing really well so far, so let's continue. As I mentioned in the last video, we need to add some styles to the links in our navigation. That's our first job in this video. Next, we'll look at a call to action button. You'll learn how to make links for users to download things like PDF files. As always, there will be some new CSS properties to learn. There's plenty more to learn, so let's get to work. Are you ready? Here we go. Let's start by improving the look of the navigation links. What will we change about the links? Let's change their color. The links are hard to see right now. Now is a good time to decide how all anchor tags on the site should look. Here's my suggestion. Let's make all the links white, the same as the rest of the text. But we need to show it's a link, so we'll add a blue dotted underline. Also, when the user hovers over the link, we'll change the text color to blue. What do you think? Sounds good? Let's add the right CSS properties in the style.css file. As I said, this code will apply to the whole website, so we'll add it to the global styles section. We want to apply it to every anchor tag, so we'll write the selector A, add curly brackets, and start writing. Let's start with the text color. Remember how to change it? Yes, we'll use the color property. Please set it to 6Fs, which is white. Great, now let's add text decoration. To make a blue dotted underline, we'll use the following properties. Text decoration. It's already set to underline as a default value, which you see on the website. We don't need to change anything here, we already have it. The next property we need is text decoration color. We'll use it to change the line color. Let's look at our color palette. If you can't find a link, you'll find it in the materials section below. I'd like to use the lightest blue color. It's 2C74B3 as you can see. So let's set the line color. Great! Now let's check the result. Perfect, it worked. Since we set these styles for every anchor tag, our link at the bottom of the page also has these styles. Great, that's what we wanted. The next property to change the line look is text decoration style. We'll set it to dotted. You don't need to remember these values in VS Code. The code editor does a great job showing available options. So don't worry if you forget one. VS Code will help. Let's move on. Let's also add an effect to change the link color when the user hovers over it. How to do it? We can use transitions, of course. Let's start by defining the color we want to change the link. Write the anchor tag selector and hover and set the color property to 2C74B3. We'll use the same color as the underline. To make the change work, we still need to write the transition property. Let's write it. As values, we first define what it should apply to. We want to change the color, so we write color. Then, after a space, we define how long the change should take. Let's set it at 0.3 seconds. That will be quite fast. In the end, we just need to define the change style, that is, the easing function. I'd like to keep it simple and not complicate things for you, so we won't write anything. This means the default function is will be applied, and that's okay. There are more options for animations, but that's a bit more complicated. Let's check our work. As you can see, each link nicely changes color when you hover your mouse over it. Good job! What else should we do? We need to remove the dots next to each item in the navigation. You don't have to do it, but I suggest you do. How to do it? We need to meet another CSS property related to lists, the list style type property. It allows you to replace the dot with any shape you want. Read more about it in additional materials. However, for now, let's focus on using the value known, which will remove the dots. Remember, list style type applies to HTML lists, so we can't use it for anchor tags. We'll use it with our unordered list. So, let's add a list style type set to known to header nav list and check the result. Awesome! The dots are gone and the navigation looks better. We've completed the first part of the work. Now that the links looks great, let's move on to the call to action button. I told you it will be a button, but that's incorrect. I would like to explain some theory that you may find helpful in the future. Sometimes what looks like a button on a web page is not a button. I need to tell you something. I put the download button in the project on purpose. It gives us a chance to talk and learn about it. And it's best to do this in practice. So what's the deal with anchor tags versus buttons? It's all about knowing when to use which of them. Let's see. Let's start with the anchor tag because we know it quite well. We use anchor tags, especially when we want to move the user to another place on the website or to another place on the internet, right? This is its first and most important use. That's why the anchor tag has the href attribute. The second important use of the anchor tag is downloading files. Yes, Thanks to this element, we can let users download something from our page or any place on the internet using only HTML and CSS without JavaScript. To do this, we use another important attribute of the anchor tag called download. Those are the two main uses of anchor tags. What about buttons? What are they used for? Buttons are for triggering some action that doesn't necessarily take the user to another place. What do I mean? First example, sending a form. The submit button will perform the action, it will send the form. What else? With buttons, we can show or hide something on the page, for example, an additional message for the user, some notification. You can also make a button disabled in some situations. Anchor tags can't do this. For example, when you're in an online store and looking at the product, you may sometimes notice that the purchase button is gray. So you can't click and buy, it's disabled. Product, for example, is out of stock. You can do a lot of things with buttons, and you can run a lot of different actions with them. All you need to do is to code the action using JavaScript. However, we don't use buttons for navigation and moving to other places on the page. This is the anchor tag job. The call to action is a mix of both, commonly seen in web development. It looks like a button, but is actually an anchor tag taking us elsewhere on the page or allowing file downloads. You've probably seen this before. For example, in blog postcards, there's often a button that says read more. It usually looks like a button, but it's really an anchor tag leading users to a specific blog article. Let's use this call to action method for the resume download link. We'll start by adding it to the HTML. We need one more list item. So, create a new line below the contact link and add a new li element. Within it, create an anchor tag as with the other list items. For now, let's write download CV and check in the browser if the new link is in the right place. As you can see, everything is correct. Now let's make it look like a button to stand out on the menu. First, we'll add a class to this element to style it separately. Let's add a class to the new anchor tag. Let's call it call to action. Why call to action and not header call to action? Because I want to use this type of element in other places on the website, not just in the header. That's why the name call to action is actually a block according to BEM methodology. We can reuse it in the project and believe me, we'll need it. That's why we don't connect the class name of this element to the header. We make it a global element. That's why we create a separate block name for it. Next, let's remove the underline for this item. As you can remember, we've added it for each navigation link. In the style.css file, we'll add styles for our call to action. Where should we place the call to action styles? In global styles or create a new section below the header? I strongly recommend adding this in the global styles because we will use this element in various places. Write the call to action class under the anchor tag. Then add text decoration none to remove the underline. Something interesting is happening here. Let's see it in DevTools. Look at the styles section for this link. Make sure you have the call to action element selected. Look at its styles. We have styles assigned to the call to action class at the top, where we remove the underline. But what's below that? There are more styles for each anchor tag on the page. This is an anchor tag too, right? You'll notice that text decoration color and text decoration style are crossed out. What does it mean? When we set styles for this link and text decoration to none, the old styles for text decoration for this link no longer work. Isn't that great? But remember, overwriting styles is a powerful technique, but we need to be careful. If we do it too much, we can get lost and things can go wrong. We won't go into this technique now, I just want to show you how it works. If you really want to dive deeper into this topic, please read the article from the materials section. Okay, let's move on. We will make this link look like a button. Buttons usually have colorful backgrounds, some are small and some are large. They can have sharp or rounded corners. Let's make a rounded button with a light blue background. What do you think? To do this, we'll first add a background color. Remember the background color property? That's what we'll use here. Set the background color to 2C74B3 and check the result. Looks good, but the background seems a bit small, right? We can make it bigger by adding padding. Please add a padding property in the code. Using the shorthand, let's set the values to 10 pixels for the top and bottom and 20 pixels for the right and left sides. Now it looks much better. We'll run the corners later because I don't want to teach you too many new things at once. We'll work on the project step by step. There's one more thing we can add now, a transition. See how the button behaves when you hover over it. The background doesn't change, but the text turns the same color as the background, so you can't see it at all. We added styles to each anchor tag to make it change color to light blue when you hover over it. Great, but as you can see, we need to fix this for the call to action button. We'll do what we did with text decoration. Override the styles. Let's say we want the text color to stay white. How can we do this? We need to specify that for call to action hover. Let's set the color to 6Fs. This overrides the style we added above. Let's check if it works. When you hover over it, nothing changes. The color is still white. This is what we wanted and everything is working as it should. Great. Now let's add one more cool effect, a darker background. Let's write background color in the style section for the hover state. According to our color palette, the value will be 205295. Let's check the result. Wow, looks great! The background color changes, but the text color remains the same. But we can make it look even better by adding a smooth color transition. But wait, we have two things we want to change, not just one. We have background color and color. How do we write this? To write more than one value in a transition, we write each one separated by a comma. First, write the property you're changing, like the background color, then the duration, then a comma, and then the same for the color property. That's it. Let's see the result. The button looks great. Well done! Okay, what's left to do? We need to add a downloading feature when the user clicks the call to action button. First, we need to find the right file. You will find it in the main folder of the course materials. It's not an image, so we won't put it in the images folder of our project. Let's create a new folder, Downloads, especially for this kind of file. Click on the new folder icon in VS Code like I do. Then type its name, Downloads. It's ready. Now let's move the PDF file from the course materials to this folder. Click and drag it into the Downloads folder like I do. After this, we can start writing the attributes for the anchor tag. We need 2 attributes to download the file after clicking the anchor tag. Let's start with the first one, href. You know this one very well. It tells us where the file to download is. As you can see, it's in the Downloads folder and it's called resume.pdf. Do you know how to write its address in the href attribute? Please pause the video now, take a moment and try it yourself. And how did it go? Did you succeed? If so, great job! If not, don't worry, we'll write it together now. Look at the example with the logo above in the EMG element. First, we wrote the name of the folder, and then after the slash, we wrote the name of the image with its extension. We're going to do exactly the same. We'll write the folder name, Downloads, and after the slash, the file name, resume.pdf. Please save the file and let's check if it worked. Well, when we click the Call to Action button, the resume opens in a new tab in our browser, but it doesn't download. This isn't exactly what we wanted. What are we missing here? We need to add one more attribute. To force the file to download, when you click on the button, we need to add the download attribute to our anchor tag. Let's add it. Write the download attribute. As its parameter, write what the file will be named after it's downloaded to the computer. Let's name it Jane Doe Resume. Save everything and let's check the result. Click the button again and this time the download window opens. Great, that's what we wanted. Do you see what the file title is? That's what we wrote as the value for the download attribute. That's how it works. Great job! Now that the header code is complete, there's just one little thing left to do. We have something unnecessary in the body code. There's also a comment there to remove it when we're done. It's the height 2000 pixels line. We don't need it anymore, so let's remove it. Good job! You've just coded a website header from scratch and you've done it perfectly. Now take a nice long break. If you want to learn more, check out all the extra materials. We'll meet again on the next challenge day. We'll be working on 2 sections next time, the hero section and the footer. Get ready for more fun tasks and learn new things. See you then!